Hello, it's been a few days since I've done an update on my art. So this is a bit of a special episode in a way. I am visiting my grandfather and I'm trying to be a little quiet right now because gentlemen of that age often go to bed early and I don't want to disturb him. I usually visit him about once every 8 weeks or so, and then do a little bit of yard work, some light housework and things like that. And I try to do a little bit of artwork during these visits. But anyway, before we get to the sketchbook, I would like to show you a few other things. Here in Asheboro, there is the oldest comic book store in North Carolina, the Comic Conspiracy. It is in the downtown area, and I visited it today. It was a delightful store. It had a variety of items. It was a lot of fun, and I intend to visit it again, probably the next time I come up here to visit. I got a few items there at the Comic Conspiracy, and I will talk about them in depth in future videos. Some of them will require a great deal of discussion, but I got a couple of children's comics, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and a Goofy comic. Here we have a comic based on the Ray Harryhausen film, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. I believe that's the one where Don Baker is the evil magician. And a couple of Conans. The artist is Barry Smith. I'll probably talk a lot about the artwork and the inking there. And some comic tie-ins for the classic film that starred Arnold. I want to say 1982 or so. Anyway, we'll look at these in depth and in future videos. Now, my grandfather, being of an older generation, still has a newspaper where one can read comic strips, and whenever I visit him, I am sure to clip out Phoebe and Her Unicorn by Dana Simpson. This is a comic that I enjoy quite a bit, but it is one that I associate with the internet since I read it online, and it is always interesting to see it in a black and white newspaper version. I'll have to talk about this comic strip in depth at another time. The artist creator of the strip also did Ozzie and Millie, which was a web comic strip from a while ago. It is also very excellent. We'll talk about that later. Now, while I was here, I noticed that my grandfather had a lot of records which haven't been used in quite some time, and I have a turntable back at home, which I've been thinking of bringing into the art studio for a while. My idea was to find some old records and to show my nephews and nieces how turntables work. I thought that would be a lot of fun. Well, my grandfather has many, many records, but they're mostly with jazz music and big band music, and that music's a little too newfangled for my taste. I prefer classical music, but I did find some things in his collection which I think would be fun to bring into the art studio. So I have some organ music. Gershwin, Rhapsody is close enough to classical. A little bit of Tchaikovsky. I thought, well, try a barbershop quartet. That's unusual. A little bit of comedy, Abbott Costello. A little bit of film scores. Some other things which I think would be fun, and a variety of Christmas music, which I think would be delightful, would be interesting to try. I certainly hope I can get the turntable to work. Let's see. Anyway, one last thing that I want to point out is this little book. This actually comes from my great uncle, Smokey Stover. This is an example of the way comics were bound. This book there are two dates in it. One is 1939 and the other is 1942. So this gives an example of that time period. And it is a type of format that we really don't have today. In it, a 4-panel comic strip is broken apart panel by panel, so when you're reading a single daily, it's 1, 2, and then you flip the page and it's 3, 4, and when you read many of them in that order, you can get the pattern of the daily. The first two are setting up the gag, and then there is sort of the twist, and then there's the payoff. And if the story continues for a few days, often panel 1 sort of resets. Sometimes it repeats things that happened so that the joke flows. This particular comic is about a pair of firemen. Smokey is the young, less intelligent one, and the other one is Captain. I think the captain's called Cashew, as in the nut. There are a few other characters, but they sort of have wacky adventures involving the firehouse. It's a little difficult for me to show you this because I have to hold it with one hand, and the binding is rather delicate. It also has a bit of a film kind of animation bit in each corner, which is actually hard to see. The paper is not of very good quality, so this is falling apart. But this would have been very inexpensive entertainment marketed to children. I'll see if I can't find scans online so that you can get an idea of what this type of format was, this very early comic format. And reading it, it's also interesting to see little bits and pieces of how language has changed. For instance, when the captain goes on a diet, he is reducing. They don't really use the term diet. He does later on use the word diet in the sense of nourishment. So in conclusion, we'll get to the sketchbook. I usually don't get a lot of sketching done during these visits, but I managed to ink 2 or 3 pages while I'm here. So I probably have about 60 pages left in the sketchbook. It'll probably take me a week to do the line art, and then I will be spending July painting like a madman. Anyway, I will keep you updated as I read these comics and as I work on the sketchbook. Oh, and as I try to put together the old turntable and breathe new life into these. Alright, I will talk to you again later. Goodbye.